And welcome back once again to the Five Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am host Sean Myers, joined by Justin Lowry. Justin, your hair definitely looks better than mine on this evening. Yes, indeed. Let's jump right into it. I think you and I both were very big fans of what happened this week. Maybe not every particular aspect of Raw and SmackDown, but the fact that it seems like it was really some major developments, months in the making, that are going to carry this product into WrestleMania in about 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely picking up like it normally does. Hopefully, it can carry the momentum through WrestleMania and beyond.
Now, it's the time of year where you expect big things to happen. You expect superstars that are maybe kind of part-timers to come back. You expect those big main event storylines to really develop. And I think we saw both of those things happen on Monday. That being said, let's talk about what had been anticipated for several months, and that was the return of Roman Reigns. People, when they found out about his leukemia, which I believe was like beginning of November, late October.
I was going to say October, but I mean that you're probably late October, early November.
Ballpark in that time frame, and it was significant because I think people kind of knew what he was going to say, but you wanted to hear it directly from him. When he was advertised as being on the show, you're going to assume that it's not going to be bad news, at least. That being said, I was shocked by how quickly things have sort of come along here with Roman. He starts off the show in what looked to be basically them telling him, go out there and just say what you want to say to this audience. We don't need a script for this. You just speak from the heart, have as long as you want. And he showed that he's, very talented as a speaker when he's not trying to do a character or read off a script type of thing. But he had this heartfelt message that he's back, and it was thanking the fans for their support. And that's one way, that I think fans can interact with wrestlers is when they're going through something, they reach out to him. He mentioned Twitter, Facebook, every way that you can contact these people now in 2019. He said that was helpful. It's benefited him in his recovery and that he's in remission. Now, what he did not say was when he would be coming back to the ring. And at least in my mind, when he was wrapping up that interview, I'm thinking, probably won't see him for a couple weeks. Maybe he'll step aside, and then either they try to get something together for him to return at WrestleMania, or they just wait basically until the night after WrestleMania. But by then, he should be good. Did you sort of have that same impression when he finished his initial interview on Raw that maybe he wouldn't really be around for the next couple of weeks and probably not wrestle until Mania?
I definitely agree with that. I was like, when he said in remission, I just went, okay, it's in remission. Things are looking positive, but he's still going to be, sorry about my dog, by the way.
Is Bailey on screen right now?
Yeah, there must be a dog outside, but, yeah. But,
is he the big dog? Maybe that's what did it, huh?
Like a big dog, yeah, he's, but anyway, I did not expect him to be physical by any means, and apparently they didn't plan on it either. I guess Vince made the call halfway through the show that he was going to get physical. Like, that wasn't supposed to be the plan from what I read. It was determined during the show. And
when we say get physical, he kind of came out and with Seth Rollins, they looked like they were maybe initially just going to intimidate the bad guys, which was like Elias and Lashley and I don't know who, Corbin and whatever. That boring group, I think McIntyre as well. It looked like, okay, well, they're here to even the odds. They'll help out Dean. But I didn't expect that Roman would actually be doing anything. And all of a sudden, about an hour and a half after he made his announcement, he's out there giving Superman punches to Lashley. He's spearing people. It seems like it's really going fast, maybe a little too fast for my liking. Because now that fans saw that, Justin, you kind of have to keep putting him on Raw and using him in some physical context, right? You can't just have him disappear for the next 3 or 4 weeks because now the fans have seen him spear. What's holding him back from having a match this week as far as we're concerned as fans?
Yeah, I thought it was a little early. What do we know? Clearly if the doctors and he agree, then, but it seems a little early. Living in Pittsburgh, I know, James Conner had the same type of leukemia. And he basically missed football activities for like 6 months, I believe. And it hasn't been 6 months for Roman. I would think at best he would wrestle WrestleMania. But now there's rumors that he's going to wrestle at Fastlane in the tag match.
And to me, that's that's a disservice because his return to the ring and his return to physicality should have been a big thing. Now, I'm not saying you don't want to ever have him spear someone or Superman punch before he gets into his first match back, but to do it that same night, if they do use him in Fastlane, it seems like it's sort of a missed opportunity to really build up his comeback. If they don't use him until WrestleMania, what's he going to do for the next 6 weeks now that we know he can already wrestle?
Is he going to hang around Ambrose and Seth Rollins again? And look, I'm not trying to sound like an ass here, but I've seen enough of the Shield reunions. I understand Monday. I get it. They're really good friends in real life. I get that, but I've seen too many Shield reunions over the last 2 years. I don't need to see it again. I don't care if Ambrose is leaving, not leaving. He's a heel 2 weeks ago. Now he's a face again. Apparently, I think they're better off keeping Roman off until maybe the night after WrestleMania, since they already seem to have their Mania plans kind of in stone, I guess it seems.
Well, so
start something with them.
We don't think that Roman's going to be involved with the Rollins and Lesnar thing, right? At least not as a participant in the match.
No, that would be insanity if Vince somehow makes it a triple threat.
Do you see him maybe being in the corner of Seth, something like that?
There's no way he probably has the cardio for a singles match. That's why if he is going to wrestle, it's going to be in a tag match to protect him.
Okay, so that's a possibility. I hope they don't go down that path. Could you see maybe him and Ambrose teaming up at WrestleMania?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
and you would be okay with that, right?
I guess. Here's the thing: if Ambrose is really leaving, he's not going to get a prominent storyline. So if that's going to, his contract's done in April, apparently. If that's it for him, maybe that's his last match with the company, teaming with Roman against, I don't know, like Baron Corbin and somebody, and there you go, there you have it.
And that way, Roman gets his comeback match at WrestleMania where it means more, but it's not taking away from a guy like a Seth Rollins or taking away from the Women's Championship match or the SmackDown World Championship match. Those matches should be bigger.
Right, and it can't really be a singles match because I don't really think there's enough time to start anything unless next Monday he's on Raw again and he gets attacked by somebody. But I just don't think I would be a little uncomfortable watching it. I just think it's a tag.
Right, yeah. Again, I thought the opening segment with Roman giving the announcement was terrific, and the reaction was incredible, as you would expect. There's no doubt that the fans sort of see that this is more than just the character of Roman Reigns in terms of what he's gone through. But I think it would have been better off if that was the end of it, and then you don't see Roman until maybe after Fastlane, or maybe he comes out and helps Ambrose at Fastlane. That sets up a WrestleMania match. Something like that. I just feel like having him get involved physically, you kind of set a bad precedent because the fans are going to be disappointed if he doesn't wrestle before Mania.
Right, I agree.
All right, so that was one big return. It was not the only one. There was speculation on Raw that there was a lot of big names that were going to be backstage. We didn't know who would actually make it on TV. Guys like Shawn Michaels, Ricky Steamboat were out there for the Ric Flair thing, which, by the way, it almost felt like without Arn Anderson, it wasn't really complete. Arn Anderson just recently let go by the company, and he's, right up there amongst Ric Flair's best friends ever in the wrestling business. But they bring out all these old guys like they always do, and Triple H, for some reason, after being a heel with Becky Lynch, he's kind of playing the face along with Stephanie, saying, oh, this is a celebration for Ric Flair. All of a sudden, Ric Flair doesn't come out, and it's Batista who attacks him backstage. Really didn't even attack him, just like dragged out the lifeless body of a deceased Ric Flair, it basically seemed like. And then Batista calls out Triple H, says, did I get your attention? Batista clearly establishing himself as a heel. So he's back. That's a little surprising because he's almost gone on record, as far as I could tell, saying like he wanted to come back and the company was sort of lukewarm in that. And maybe he was just playing coy the whole time. But it looks pretty clear now it's going to be him and Triple H at Mania. They've planted the seeds to that previously, but the fact that Batista's the heel and now Triple H seemingly is the face, that was a little confusing for me. What's your thoughts?
I'm very confused by it. They go back and forth so much. 1 week he's playing the heel with Becky Lynch. The next week he's playing the face, celebrating Ric Flair. And now Batista. I don't get why I don't get that. Like, you didn't need Batista to quote unquote beat up Ric Flair to get Triple H's attention. I mean, we haven't seen him since SmackDown 1000. Nothing's been said since. It's not even like he's on Twitter provoking Triple H.
Well, I'm thinking they're going to play off the fact that Batista said, I've wanted to come back. The company doesn't seem interested. That's the only thing I could think of.
They haven't really put that out there. That unless you read the dirt sheets or stuff like that, you're not going to know that.
Right.
And apparently this was always the plan, though. That's
when they announced Flair's birthday celebration like 3 weeks ago.
Back when SmackDown 1000, when when Batista said, "You never beat me," that was supposed to plant the seed for the WrestleMania match. But then when Triple H tore his pec, then things became a question mark because they didn't know if he would be okay enough by WrestleMania. Clearly, I guess he's going to be, or at least somewhat passable.
Right, he's going to get in there, whether or not he's not going to be 100% probably.
No, there's no way. But I think it's very weird that Triple H is the face. What? Shouldn't we want Batista to win? Plus, Batista's a movie star now. He plays a Avenger. The Avenger movie's coming out the end of April, where he's a superhero. It's weird that he's playing the heel. Now, are we going to see somehow a turn? Is there going to be like a double turn, something we're not expecting yet?
That's too much. I mean, if they do that, then it's like, why did you bring him back as a heel and have him attack this beloved character?
Batista wasn't the one who attacked Ric Flair, that he found Ric Flair like that. I don't know. I mean, it's weird that Batista's the heel. I don't understand it whatsoever. Unless Batista wanted to be the heel, because he does make a better heel.
I heard that was based on how he came back last time. Now, here's the thing about people forget this. It wasn't that people hated Batista as soon as he came back. They hated that he was pushed in front of Daniel Bryan.
Right. It was just bad timing. It wasn't like certain people hate Roman Reigns. They hate what he represents, how Vince and company are handling him. And I did find it funny, like you didn't even notice it, but I texted you. He had blue glasses on and a blue nose ring. So clearly Batista, he was playing off his old return and how the crowd turned on him.
That was one of the funniest things that the crowd's ever come up with, by the way.
I freaking loved it. I mean, when I saw the blue nose ring glasses, I was like, oh, this is awesome. That's the first thing I noticed.
So Batista's back. Is it going to be one of the biggest matches at Mania? I'm thinking right now it's probably going to be like maybe the 4th biggest match, if not even above that.
It's going to be, because Triple H will never, ever allow it not to be. I mean, I think his ego. And plus, Batista, he's not coming back to be the 3rd match on the card. I would assume it's going to be built up probably as maybe the 3rd biggest match, I think, on the card, behind the Universal title and the Raw Women's title.
But that being said, you even said yourself when we talked the other day, the Universal title sort of on the back burner just because of Lesnar not being there and Rollins seemingly preoccupied.
Right. There's not much hype getting that, so maybe it'll be the 2nd. I think eventually that's going to kick into high gear, after Fastlane with the Universal title. I mean, it has to. And I'll probably get better billing than what seems to be Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a little bit.
So 2 weeks ago, they make some waves on Raw and then subsequently SmackDown by bringing up these 4 NXT stars. And they weren't sort of mid-card guys. They weren't, a Lacey Evans or a Heavy Machinery. They were 4 of the biggest names in NXT. And in the case of a couple of those guys, the biggest names over the past handful of years. So the first week, they wrestle on Raw and SmackDown. Everyone loves it. The second week, they wrestle on Raw again, and then they sort of got cut out of SmackDown. Gargano and Ciampa did, at least. But what are you thinking of this debut, or I guess the debut period of these 4 guys? Because Aleister Black and Ricochet knock off the Revival, 2nd consecutive week that the Raw Tag Team Champions, who were supposed to be getting this push in their own right, lose to these newcomers. It's sort of weird because they're putting these guys in tag team matches probably just to consolidate some time, but they're making their current roster that needs these pushes, guys like the Revival, guys like Andrade, guys like Elias, they end up suffering the losses in this.
Well, I guess from the sounds of it, it's not like you're aware. Apparently, Ciampa's hurt, and they rewrote that to get them off of Raw and stuff. Apparently, he has a neck injury, and I guess he's going to wrestle at TakeOver and then take care of it after that. So I think.
Well, he looked like he suffered a knee injury on SmackDown. It's not that, though.
They're saying he's okay from that. They're saying it's a neck injury. So you don't expect to see him wrestling, I guess, too much until the takeover before Mania. I guess he'll drop the belt if it's that serious and then go off and have the surgery. So probably don't expect to see that whole tag team. That's probably going to be dropped.
Well, Gargano's match was dropped on SmackDown as well. He was supposed to go against Cesaro.
Right. So I guess, the injury caused a little bit of rewrites there. When it comes to Ricochet and Aleister Black, I like both of those guys. They're not. It's weird that they're throwing them as a tag team. It's like you said, we're just trying to consolidate time. But talk about booking yourself in a corner. Those guys can't lose. Neither should your rival. They shouldn't be losing right now either. They just won the belt.
They win the titles and then they lose 2 consecutive weeks to guys that just getting called up.
Again, you make them look like a joke and the titles look like a joke again. Don't put those guys in a match together because neither can afford to lose. It's this bad, stupid booking.
With that being said, Justin, I know we sort of talked about this before. Are these guys permanently on the main roster? Because they still do the NXT graphics when they come out, and it seems like even though Johnny Gargano dropped his title, seems like they'll probably have commitments through WrestleMania with NXT. But I heard Aleister Black was sort of like saying a goodbye at one of the shows. Right. So how do you read this situation?
I'm reading it like they're doing a little bit of both. I don't know what the taping schedule in NXT is like. Maybe they've already taped episodes, so they're still applying that they're NXT members. But I feel like they're main roster guys now, right? I mean, if they're showcasing them every week, I would assume that they're, on the roster. But they're Raw and SmackDown, so you don't. Do
you think we're going to wait until after Mania for them to sort of sift through all these newcomers, because they still haven't decided with Lacey Evans? EC3's not even on TV. Lars Sullivan, I don't know if he's ever going to come back at this point after what happened. But, Heavy Machinery, they haven't been determined on which side. And then these 4 guys, you think ultimately they're going to have to stick them on Raw or SmackDown, right?
I would assume so. I mean, they're doing the draft, the second week after Mania? They've already said that.
And I don't like that. I don't like how they do it.
Well, it is what it is. So maybe they're going to kind of hold off until then and separate the rosters. I mean, they're going to have to build up SmackDown because their move to Fox is going to be a big deal.
It is, but that's that. And not to get on too much of a tangent here, but that's why I'm baffled as to why Becky and Charlotte and Ronda are all going for the Raw Championship. Wouldn't you want them on SmackDown?
It doesn't mean you're not going to get that. Comes after the draft. Why Asuka can move to Raw and Becky, you would assume, is going to win. Will then move right back to SmackDown, and Ronda maybe take some time off to start a family. I'm just guessing, throwing it out there.
So one other thing I want to touch on with Raw, it was, I think, a little refreshing to see Finn Balor get a good title defense and to win the match cleanly, but he did so against Lio Rush. Leo's a guy that I think has really, really helped Bobby Lashley, and I know a lot of people say, oh, I hate Lio Rush, but I think that's the point. I mean, they hate him because his character's, obnoxious, he's a loudmouth, so on and so forth. So when he comes out and he interrupts a moment of bliss, which at this point, a moment of bliss is basically Alexa just like drooling over her male guests, which I don't even know what to make of Alexa now. Is she still a heel?
Nobody knows.
Regardless, Leo interrupts it, so that gets him more heat. And then he's trying to speak on behalf of Lashley. Finn gets him in a match. They have a good match. This is the type of talent that this roster has, that they can use guys, whether they be from 205 Live, whether they be from NXT or whatever, and have some really good matches on Raw. I think if Finn can sort of turn the title into a title that is defended on a regular basis in really good in-ring competition, that would really do wonders, because you and I went back and forth. I thought that title lost a little bit of its luster over the past handful of months, but things like this could really help establish it back as being significant again.
Well, yeah, especially with the Universal title not being on TV ever. I mean, it's the title on Raw. So, I mean, and it's always been known as the workers' man title, right? Back in the day, in the 80s with Steamboat, Macho Man, Michaels in the 90s. Usually one of your better workers hold the belt. So Finn's a pretty damn good worker. They had a great match, and I think, that's what people want to see.
Let's jump over to SmackDown. There was some big returns as well on SmackDown, and some that I don't think really we saw coming. I get the feeling that maybe these happened day of, and it was potentially Bruce Pritchard showing his impact on the product. I'll let you maybe speak a little bit more to him. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what he's been doing recently, but he got hired as seemingly one of the top creative guys within the past week. Supposedly he was going to work right away. We saw a lot more excitement, but with SmackDown, they really changed things up. The first two segments of the night, you have a change in the WWE Championship match, you have a return of a superstar, and then you have a reunion of a tag team in which a guy basically comes out of retirement. This is all in a span of 15 minutes. So SmackDown right off the bat caught everyone's attention.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting, Kevin Owens. Me and you kind of went back and forth on who Bryan's WrestleMania opponent would be. I actually lobbied for Kofi. You were on the other side. What I don't like about it is what I told you. Vince is already done that with Becky. So we're seeing the same basically storyline play out, with both of those. I think that's unnecessary. I think it takes away from it. I get, Vince is being the evil bad guy again, not giving the fans what they want. But that's the other thing.
Which is it's so dumb because they literally came out 2 months ago and said we're going to give the fans what they want, and Vince was the one leading that charge.
Right, like, you guys are the GMs. No more GMs, blah, right. But we all knew that was BS.
I thought once Corbin was gone, everything was going to be better, Justin. That was my understanding.
That's who they blamed it on, right? It was all Corbin's fault. You're right. I mean, I'm cool with it. I mean...
But so when I said I didn't expect Kofi, I still kind of am surprised that they have enough confidence in him challenging for a title in a WrestleMania main event. But I also made the argument you don't want to have a rematch after we already see it at Fastlane. They creatively switched that around seemingly so that they could have a fresh title match at Mania. That's at least how I read it.
Right, but, is Kevin Owens a heel? Is he a face? Because Bryan's been a very excellent heel. You want to keep that going. But since Kevin Owens gets thrown into the match, he comes off like a heel because they wanted to see Kofi. Now he's the bad guy getting a shot because Vince McMahon chose him.
This is why I feel like they did it like the day or maybe a day in advance that they decided to go with this, because the prior week we saw vignettes of Kevin Owens at Chuck E. Cheese or whatever with his kids, yes, and he's clearly coming across as a relatable dad and a good guy. Right. Well, he still seems like a good guy based on how SmackDown played out with him and Kofi teaming up and winning cleanly and getting along, but I always get the feeling that within a couple weeks or maybe even next week, he will eventually turn. Now, he can't really turn on Kofi, I don't think, because then that becomes a match as opposed to Bryan and Kofi. But Kevin Owens is definitely in a weird spot, and the fans, they're in a weird spot as well, because the reaction to him returning was pretty lukewarm because they were ticked off that it wasn't Kofi.
Right. So I don't know what they're going with. And assuming he's going to lose, where does he go after that? Does he start a quick feud for WrestleMania? Does he stay in the title scene and somehow it's a triple threat match?
Why is he on SmackDown?
He was on SmackDown, wasn't he?
Nope.
Beforehand? No, was he on Raw?
Yep.
It doesn't messy. I don't even remember. It doesn't.
And he had a thing with Bobby Lashley. Both Lashley took out both Owens and Zayn.
Yeah, that's right. See, look, nobody even knew. Look, and then, you know what? Vince and company probably said no one's going to remember. Look, I sure as shit didn't remember. Who the hell cares? Just do whatever the hell you want.
Well, I mentioned a tag team reuniting. This one really, for me, came out of left field. The Hardy Boys are back together. It's really surprising because, one, Matt Hardy basically retired. I don't think that they have formally announced it as a retirement, but for everything that came across, it was his in-ring career was probably over. And why are the Hardy Boys back together and seemingly doing like the 2005 version of the Hardy Boys? It's not the woken Matt Hardy.
Yeah, apparently that's been dropped too. Well, apparently Matt knew he was coming back and he was just working the audience. And they had a 2-year deal with an option for a third year, I guess.
So they're just about to hit that second year, correct?
Right, and then they were about to be finished, but the company picked up the option year, so they're through the next year again. And I read that the Woken gimmick, Brokey gimmick is off the table now, and they're going back to, like you said, the 2005 Hardys, doing their thing.
Is that going to work for a full year?
Probably not. No, work for like a month, and then they'll break off again. Or get off TV. I don't know. I think it's one of those things that they didn't really know what to do with them.
Jeff, I thought was doing okay though, right?
Right.
I mean, like, it's not like Jeff needed some direction or needed a boost.
No, I feel like it's one of those. Vince didn't want them, or maybe Matt, or anywhere to go to any other competition because he's, kind of wary about that right now. He re-ups them for another year, and we'll throw the Hardys boys back together again. Yeah, maybe the Dudleys will come back. Let's do it, TLC.
So,
19, baby.
Well, the thing is, Matt could have done his own thing.
Yeah.
Jeff could have done his own thing. It seems like you're sort of, reducing both of their impacts in this regard. Plus, if you want to get a big name tag team, why do you put them on SmackDown, which already has a loaded tag team division? Quite frankly, they don't need any more help in that division. They have the Bar, which the Bar's been used pretty well on SmackDown. The New Day, which maybe that's thinking their long-term replacement for the New Day could be the Hardys. You have the Usos. You have so many tag teams already on that show.
Well, my thing is the New Day. What about the Usos? They're still worried that their contract's up in April. They haven't re-signed. I know they're the champs at the moment, but maybe they threw them on SmackDown because they're not sure the Usos are going to be around and they're going to be their replacement. There's a lot of unanswered questions, that's for sure.
Real quick, do you expect any team or any individual who's made a lot of money, who's had a lot of success, and who generally is treated pretty well by WWE to actually leave? Or are they just all bark? I mean, guy like Ty Dillinger, yeah, it makes sense. He wasn't being used at all on TV. But like the guys who are treated pretty well?
I mean, the Usos have, I would think, have a pretty good position in the company. I don't know what they get paid. You think they get paid pretty well. Unless it's a thing that they feel like they've accomplished everything they could. And, there's some people like that, artists that want to explore different things. They might look at, we've done everything we can here. We've faced every tag team. We want to go face the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. Maybe they're thinking, and they're going to probably get paid well if they would decide. I mean, I have no idea. We're just speculating,
right.
Having some fun here. I mean, there are dream matches. I would love to see the Young Bucks versus the Usos. People would pay a lot of money to see that on a pay-per-view, I think. I don't know what their thought process is. And I guess their dad came out this week and said that they have nothing left to prove. Yes. They have nothing left to prove in the WWE.
That sounds like a good bargaining ploy right there.
Or they're just doing this up to the last minute to get the most money out of the WWE,
Absolutely.
Which is another strong possibility.
One last thing on SmackDown before we finish up with the Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte exchange, which really came to the forefront today. Andrade and Rey deliver once again, but this time they do it in a triple threat with R-Truth. R-Truth, I mean, you say, oh, I forgot what show Matt Hardy was on. People forgot who the U.S. champion was on SmackDown. R-Truth, after he won it and then defended it successfully in the same night on SmackDown, hasn't been used. He's sort of a joke champion.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not going to be distraught over R-Truth holding the U.S. title because that title hasn't meant a whole lot. The other guys, Nakamura and Rusev, weren't doing much with it either.
Right.
It's sort of like he deserves it type of deal. It's to a much lesser extent what Kofi has going on. R-Truth's been around. He's been entertaining. But something has to change by WrestleMania with this title picture, right?
Not necessarily. I can see him just defending it on the pre-show. I mean, we're going to have like a 3-hour pre-show.
I mean, you see Mysterio and Andrade, though, and those guys are so good. Why isn't that the title feud?
I can't argue that. I don't know. Because, him and Carmella go up and out there and have dance breaks. That's why, Sean. That's why, damn it.
I think that you always want to have a place for a guy like R-Truth. I just think that having him as a champion and then not even using him for almost a month, it's really a disservice. That's the one issue that SmackDown has. They're doing the same thing with Asuka. When they have guys like Ricochet and Aleister Black wrestling, and then they have a 2-hour show, and they want to give, some of these great in-ring performers opportunities, you go weeks at a time where you don't see champions, and that's a major issue. That's one luxury Raw has of that extra hour they could squeeze someone like an Asuka or an R-Truth in each and every week if they had them on that side.
Right. I mean, if there was another hour, you'd probably see the U.S. title on every week, but there's just not enough time.
So today, there's quite a Twitter feud ensuing between Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch, and this has really been going on for months. And Charlotte, I think from what I could see, for the most part, she's sort of been in the background with this. It's really between Ronda and Becky, which we both think would be the best match, just one-on-one. We know that's not the case. So they're having this feud. Ronda Rousey on Twitter is basically saying wrestling's fake, I'll kill you in real life, sort of undermining what she's been doing for the past year. Becky is just spitting fire as always. But there's so much going on screen as well with these two. Ronda Rousey basically laying down the title. Becky Lynch comes out again. Now she's arrested. Why are they doing all this on TV? And is it really just having the opposite effect of what they want? Is it taking away from what was a already made storyline?
I don't know if it's taking away. It's definitely unnecessary.
Are you like at this point? Aren't you like, oh, Becky again coming out? Like
like I told you earlier, what's bugging me about that is Becky coming out with the one crutch, hopping on her knee like she has a knee injury. Okay, she was cleared weeks ago. She said that. They even said that she's cleared. Why is she still injured with her stupid knee? I know Charlotte attacked it again at a live event, but please do not run this through WrestleMania that she has an injured knee for the next month.
I think that they will do that. Why else?
That's going to take away from the match, as
it will.
Discussed, yesterday with each other, because the psychology of it is they're going to focus on her knee. She's not going to be able to do certain things. It's going to take away from the match that we want to see. That part of the storyline I could do away with.
Isn't this sort of the problem with how they try to get faces over, especially when they think a face isn't quite big enough and needs some boosting?
She's already over. You don't need to give her a Stone Cold treatment.
You stack the deck so much against them with the injury, with the authority, that it's almost like this is what they do with Roman Reigns.
Right. Eventually the crowd turns on that face because it's too much. You can't stack the world against them. It gets annoying after a while.
And you hope that doesn't happen with Becky. I think she'll be good through Mania. But the question is, let's say she does not win the title. Okay, let's say Charlotte wins it. They're probably going to do another thing where Becky has to overcome another hurdle, so on and so forth. At that point, you're going to start saying, oh, I don't want to see this again. We've already seen this. We're now seeing it with Kofi Kingston as well. The authorities against Kofi. When you already have this crowd reaction, I just don't think you need all this. I think ultimately you do run the risk of sort of minimizing their appeal to the fans because the fans say, oh, they're shoving this down our throat now as opposed to something else.
It's just the same old, same old. They don't deviate. It's like the face champion has to go against the authority, and the heel champions get backed by the authority. They did that with Rollins and Kevin Owens. It gets really annoying really quick because it's the same stuff we've been seeing for the last 20 years.
Daniel Bryan against Randy Orton.
Right. That was, it's like the same stuff, repetitive. Even CM Punk going back. Vince and it's like we get it. The faces have to be against the authority. The heels are part of the authority. It gets really just have feuds, just have matches. Stay the hell out of it like you said you were going to do months ago.
Right, and I remember the night after Royal Rumble, Becky and Ronda had their little exchange in the ring, and I think that was the night that Ronda really struggled at first, and then she sort of redeemed herself later after Becky came out. That was that moment, everyone's like, that's the match I'm ready to see. You don't need to do all this other stuff from that point forward.
Right. I agree.
All right, Justin. Anything else that was notable to you this week?
No, but I would like to share a pet peeve of
okay.
mine.
I'm ready.
All over Twitter, it's people talking about what's Taker going to do at Mania. And news on Taker, news on The Undertaker, his WrestleMania plans. Why in 2019 do people want to see this man? Let the guy stay retired. Who in the hell wants to see a broken down guy with two fake hips walking down the ring to have a 5-minute match? It's just embarrassing. Guys, drop it, please. Thank you.
And real quick on that, he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, right?
No, you can induct him, and then that's it. He doesn't need to have a match. He hasn't had a good match in years. Stop it. I don't want to see him anymore.
Yeah, him and Roman. After that match, I said this needs to be it for the Undertaker. It was a sad, pathetic match,
Right.
and I
There's
was like,
really
this.
guys on the internet and Twitter, I think, beating their meat because they want to see the friggin' Undertaker. Like, hey, I respect the Undertaker. He was like great legend. But it's time to move on, everybody. Move on. Please share this clip when you tweet it out. All right. And
I always.
down below. Thank you.
Justin Lowry fired up as we put the bow on another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Check us out on Twitter. We'll be tweeting out some clips of this. Also, Justin, it's just a few weeks away, the 1-year anniversary upcoming of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Now, I have a lot of things turning in my mind, and we're not going to promise anything yet, but I have hopefully some exciting stuff to come. So that'll be up in a couple of weeks. We'll also get into Fastlane as well as WrestleMania. That's all to come on future episodes of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.